personal views and opinions expressed by our podcast guests are their own and are not legal advice or official statements by their organizations. Hello, my name is Debbie Reynolds. They call me the Data Diva. This is the Data Diva Talks Privacy podcast, where we discuss data privacy issues with industry leaders around the world with information that businesses need to know now. I have a special guest on the show, Bill Pugh. He is the co-founder and managing partner of Smart Connections Consulting LLC. So he works in strategy and technology advisory in digital transformation and IoT, smart cities, smart grid, and the use of digital twin technology. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. It's an honor. I follow all the things that you do and watch how you move in the whole privacy space, and I think it's awesome. So thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Well, you're going to drop some knowledge for us on cyber and IT and stuff like that. And I'm really happy to have your quiet voice, quiet storm voice on this show. Bringing great radio voice.
Awesome. Yes. Love it.
Well, yeah, so we're connected on LinkedIn. I love your posts and the comments that you make. You stand out a lot to me because you really cut through a lot of the BS, I think, that people sort of talk about. So it isn't kind of rainbows and unicorns. You're like, look, this is what's happening. This is what you need to think about. And I feel like, I don't know, I guess I am really attracted to people like that because I can tell that you lived, have some real lived experience, right? It's a real life experience that you can impart to people to really help them get from, point A to point B without kind of the fluffy talk.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that it's extremely important to do that. And you're right. I mean, I've gone through the fire, and probably still have the burn marks to prove it. We don't make advancements by towing the line. We really don't. Right. I mean, and there is no one person that has all of the answers. So it's a community of us that share common ideas and weigh in on things, to the best of our abilities, which is what I found, really interesting about what you were doing. And it complements everything that I think that the rest of us are trying to do. So whether it be, a vertically integrated solution such as, traffic monitoring, where everyone kind of thinks, oh, they're watching me. And these are truly just detection cameras, or whether it's I'll tell you one thing, what data you're giving away in this microwave society today. My kids, they want to get an app. They're like, accept. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So I kind of look at it as, having gone through breaches, having gone through having my identity stolen, having gone through working with companies and building solutions, and then having to think about how we prevent those things going forward. I just think that it's a community, things that you do, things that I do. There's a number of other folks that I think, do tremendous things as well. And I'm a student of technology across the board. It's the continued learning that I think drives me to say some of the things that I say, irrespective of what others might think.
Yeah. Smart cities is fascinating, and this is an area I work with as well on the privacy side. I would love to know kind of your trajectory into this area. And then I also want to make a comment and want your thoughts on this. So I feel like I tell people, I feel like cybersecurity needs like a PR campaign because people don't really understand it really well. So the analog to this is kind of like, let's say, if someone says they're a doctor, and people are like, oh, well, what type of doctor, right? When you're cybersecurity, they think you do everything, right?
Yeah.
And we know that that's not true. So tell me a little bit your thoughts about kind of that kind of mismatch around how people think about cyber and what people do, and then how you sort of ended up in kind of the smart cities, the smart space, the IoT space?
So my background is started in wireless, point to point, point to multi-points. Now, companies like Harris, they were doing things in, from 5 gig up to 38 gig. So I mean, I started, really doing hardware design for those radio systems, and I continued to always look for. I shifted out, jobs from a design engineer to a project manager to working for a chop house, anything that was going on with how do you put technology together. I wanted to understand the manufacturing process and everything. Once I felt like I had gathered, a broad array of tools, then that was right around the .com boom era. And so startups were just, going crazy. And I landed in the smart grid space with a company by the name of Silver Spring Networks. And they were they were the first IPv6, smart grid solution company. And for me, when they said IPv6, I was like, oh, that's awesome. I mean, you get IPsec built into that. So I know that there's going to be security end to end as long as it's on the transport side. I hung out there for a while. They, being a startup, they, allowed me to wear different hats, and I built out the distribution automation line of business. So that was another step that I got to take, and as well as working on implementation of their ERP system. So it was just, moving around in areas that you would not think, you normally would jump into. And I was always looking at an opportunity for challenge. I left them right before they went public, and I joined a street lighting company. They were basically retrofitting street lights and had the idea that, hey, well, we can use this for other things. So this was right circa 2010, 2011. Where they were doing this, and this company was Sensity Systems, and I got to I wanted to see what I did over at Silver Spring. Was that lightning in a bottle, or did I really have something that that kind of pushed the envelope and would address things in a different fashion? And so we did, and built out parking solutions and my other monitoring solutions, follow me lighting, and a lot of the things that you hear in terms of the applications for smart cities. They were acquired by Verizon. And then I kind of just hung out for a while, stayed at home playing video games and everything like that, just taking downtime until my wife was like, you're not done. So, you need to figure something out. And that was where I said, I kind of know smart grid space. I kind of know smart city space. And I'm like, and the biggest gap that I saw at that time was cities were being inundated by OEMs. OEMs walk in, they're like, what's your problem? And I didn't have to be that. I figured, I said, I can straddle the fence and literally help the cities understand where the gaps are and what they needed to do currently with their existing data, as opposed to generating new data and trying to gain insights from that. I'm like, your current data can be used. And that was the premise that Smart Cities was kind of, going after in the first place. Cities had a lot of data and they didn't know what to do with it. The end of that was Jonathan Reckentile, and I met at a conference, and he told me, we kind of hit it off. We, connected well. He said, hey, we're doing this thing over in Palo Alto. Would you be interested? And I was like, sure. What is it? And it was a traffic modernization exercise. And I asked a bunch of questions about it, and it came in that, well, we're going to do this whole thing about opening up the data to app developers. When we got a look at that, it was it was a challenge. Traffic data is extremely fast, and it's a lot of it. I think for 120 intersections, they had like 4 terabytes of data per day. And if you're going to open this data up and let app developers get it, they're not going to know what to do with it. There's no context to that data. It's voltages. And so he gave me my first shot. And that is where I think I built the first digital twin for traffic. I have an ecosystem of partners. I have software developers that I work with, and we put the whole thing together. And he saw it and was blown away. Took that off. Now, I say that to say that a lot of education took place in terms of what digital twins were, and now there's a proliferation of digital twins, as you well know, all the way from the buildings to 3D models and everything of that nature. But we were really focused on real-time streaming data and the insights that can be gained from that. And Jonathan kind of helped launch that in a real way. So I went from 1 to 5 to 20 cities over the course of 1 year. And I'll pause here and say, digital twins in and of themselves, whenever they're out in the built environment, are an attack surface. Right. They don't natively have security built in, so they are indeed an attack surface, especially if you're looking at distributed systems. So that then drove me into, all right, I need to understand this whole cybersecurity thing and where the threats are, and what are the modern approaches, what are the old approaches, and how do you bridge them?
Yeah, excellent. I would love for you to describe, let people know, I know what digital twin is. And I traverse so many different industries. So digital twin in your IoT is very different. Like, there's a digital twin in identity as well that's totally different. But explain to people what a digital twin is in IoT.
So the way that I've kind of explained it is, and everyone kind of says, well, it's a virtual representation of either a physical object, device, network, what have you, which in essence is true. The differences are, you have CAD drawings that are 3D models, and that is a digital twin on a different level. You have layers, and I've kind of started to say you have layers now, because when I say real-time streaming data as the digital twin, then I literally show a replicate of, or we'll say a device twin of a traffic light, a controller, where the data is kind of landing. And then we visualize that in such a way. So imagine now that you can literally see any given intersection and understand when the lights are going to change. The twin side of it will allow you to perform what-if analysis. So the data is still flowing through the living management model, and I can take a replica of that and continue to receive that data, but not impact anything on the built environment side. So I can run a lot of what-if analysis. An example would be that while I'm taking the traffic data, I can also take the environmental data, and I can start to align these to a corridor and demonstrate from a baseline what the CO2 emissions were. And then as traffic improved, what the CO2 emissions are now. And that is probably one of the best ways that I can demonstrate what I do with digital twins. And there is no another one I'll say is there is no single digital twin that does it all. We're all still figuring out how do you layer all of this together to actually get the real full benefit of all of that. And when I started, there was no digital twin consortium. There was no industrial Internet of Things consortium that was addressing how to do digital twins or what digital twins mean and everything like that. So I think it's great. I think it's great information sharing. But there's a bunch of us. Rob Tiffany's another one that has been doing this stuff for an awful long time. And I think it's an ever evolving thing. The more we learn about data and how data, moves and where it needs to go and who has, the ability to get to it, the more that we have to secure that. An example would be if an intersection is talking to another intersection, who has access to that data? How is that data authenticated, and how frequently is it authenticated to start making localized decisions? So that's why I say, digital twins in and of themselves are attack surfaces.
Absolutely. That's a great description. It's like Sim City, basically. That's what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's go deep into IoT for especially in smart cities. So I think people understand that there's technology and things like traffic lights, right? Just to make things run and stuff like that. I think what people don't understand is that there's more happening on that pole than you think. There's more stuff to that cities are collecting because the technology is getting much more advanced. In addition to sort of managing the technology around how people move around cities, these technologies can also collect personally identifiable information of people, right? So let's say,
Absolutely.
people walking around the street, maybe there may be a solution for crowd management where they have a capability to do like facial recognition and different things. So tell me a little bit about that part of smart cities and IoT.
So, I think that's a good example. So I think there's a bit of confusion in terms of whenever someone sees a camera at an intersection, they'll see that and they'll say, "Oh, well, that's a speed camera. You're going to go through there, and if you're speeding, it's going to license plate recognition." Not necessarily. Those are more or less what you call detection cameras. So they've become a lot smarter over time, but their main purpose is to replace what's known as ground loops. So ground loops are, they dig up the ground and they put these inductive loops in the ground, and they're able to count the vehicles as they cross an intersection. Over time, what's known as green wave there's a number of names associated with it. They wanted to reduce the number of fatalities at these intersections, so they needed more information. Well, those cameras now are able to give them that. They can tell now the velocity of a vehicle, whether or not a vehicle just left the intersection, time to arrival, and all of these other things. But they cannot and do not, in a lot of instances, do the whole, well, we know that car and we saw that car over here, and now we're correlating that to the direction that it's going now. And a lot of that is governed by the city council. So whenever they go out and they say, we're going to put this technology in the field, in a lot of instances, if there's an element of privacy associated with it, city council has to approve it. The cameras that actually monitor speed, now, part of that is they have to let you know. If there's cameras involved, they got to put up those signs that say, hey, cameras are over here, and this is the purpose that they're there for. But I think now it's being tamped down in terms of the data that they can collect. In North America, I think it's far more strict than it is, of course, in Europe. In Europe, if I'm not mistaken, there's one camera per 11 people, and they know, they know that it's being watched. They know objects are being detected and things of that nature. But there's, just because that we have these quote unquote policies and bases lined up in the cities does not mean that they're being followed. There are indeed cameras that are, if they're in the city, they're governed by the city. If they're on private property, that's something entirely different. So are they identifying vehicles? In a lot of instances, yes, they are. Is there license plate recognition? If you see that camera down low, yes, it is. and they're capturing that data. Now, what the question that we need to be asking is, what are they doing with that data? How long are they keeping that data? And where else are they sharing that data? And 9 times out of 10, people don't ask those questions. They don't care. They want access to where they want to go. If you're going to capture my license plate, go right ahead and do it. But I think the biggest piece of IoT equipment that is monitored that you don't think about is your cell phone. There are counts all over the place. There are companies that they make their business by monitoring cell phones. Now they'll say they'll anonymize the data, and they won't. We don't know who it is. I'm sorry, if you have a MAC address, you have an IMEI, they know who it is. It's not that difficult to get to.
Exactly. Oh, wow. So you had talked, I want to talk a little bit about, I don't know, I guess the sci-fi elements. You probably laugh at this when you see movies when they they have the technology up on the screen and they're like correlating stuff in real time. It's just not really like that, right? It's like
Minority Report.
Right, Minority Report. It's not quite like that, but we are seeing a lot more movement in fusion, where for example, a lot of things that were kind of military grade technology is kind of coming into kind of commercial spaces and city spaces where they're trying to create technologies that will put, collect all these little desperate areas of data and put it together in a way that people can make those types of minority reporting. We're not there yet, but tell me a little bit about kind of that area, because I feel that's like really emerging.
Yeah, so that's the whole AR piece of everything, which, again, this is the problem that I have across the board is that, there are technologies out there, and in a number of instances, we address a problem tech leading as opposed to, okay, so what is the problem we're trying to solve? That's the first question. And then what are the use cases around that? I've always been a huge proponent of smart city isn't something that happens to you. It should be something that happens for you.
Right.
And so, all of the neat things that are being demonstrated in terms of, for example, some of smart glasses, and they can literally make a phone call to the ops center. And the ops center says, okay, I see you're looking at that device right now. And they can pop up the instructions for what you need to do to resolve that problem. That technology does exist. Is it where it needs to be yet? No, not at all. But the future of it is that. And now is that the metaverse? No, I don't think so. That's, someone's going to say, well, that's the beginning of the metaverse. No, it's not. It's an extension of having, before we used to have to go out and we used to have schematics, and you actually looked at things, and then you'd have to fold the schematics up and find out that you had a down rev version. And then all of a sudden it got tied to a tablet. And now you have the tablet with internet access, and you can make sure that it's the latest. And this is just the next progression where you can have, someone remotely looking at things. I still say that we really got to tie it to the real use case and the benefit that's going to be provided. But the tech enablement, again, is the easy part from my perspective. The difficult part is if I'm out there and someone has dropped their glasses, they misplaced their glasses, and I pick these glasses up. Can I do what they were doing?
Right.
Can I access that network? If I can access that network, that's where, for me, it gets to be a conversation around, all right, if a device is trying to make a call, it should be authenticated.
Right.
Not once, but continuously authenticated.
Right.
You get access. All right, now, where are you? What are you doing? Are you still the same person that had this before? And, and then by role-based access, you cannot get to certain information. You're just not allowed to. And I think it's the same thing for these other devices that are coming on board. So the whole data fusion thing is a big deal to me, because right now, when we talk about edge compute and everything like that, we're talking about devices that are sitting at the edge that can talk to a multitude of other devices, irrespective of the transport.
Right.
The data is aggregated there. Now, I think that there has to be an underlying notion of, if a sensor is trying to send data to this edge device, there needs to be an exchange of authentication certificates and what have you.
Right.
And even before that device comes onto the network, it's, who are you? What is your role? What data are you going to be looking for? And let me check to make sure that you're authorized to actually do all of that. So I'm going to put you on pause until I verify that you are who you are. And I feel like every single sensor ought to have that level of authentication and secure access.
I agree with that. I would love to talk about something you pointed out that I wrote down and I would love for you to chat about, and that is kind of the connection between IoT and IT. Or maybe the disconnect there, right? It's like people want the fancy, cool flying robot thing, but they don't want to do like the basic stuff. So what are your thoughts?
That is part of the problem. All right, so pre-pandemic, any smart city initiative that was being driven was 9 times out of 10 being driven on the OT side, right? So outside of the IT environment of the city. Now, you're going out and you're putting out all of these devices. You're saying, we're going to get all of this data. We're going to pull this stuff back. Alerts, events, monitoring, management, all of that data, it goes where? I mean, if your IT environment, if your foundation on the IT side has not been solved, then you're only compounding your exposure by continually putting out these devices. So I have a tendency to start on the inside. It's not sexy or anything like that, but we've got to get the inside to the point where, one, you want to do that data fusion, you got to have a way to securely share that data.
Right.
So now you got to get these vertically integrated organizations kind of focused on, again, I'll use the traffic situation. If traffic has insights that would be beneficial to me as sustainability, then I want to make sure that I get access to that data. And we've got to figure out how do what data do you want? What data sets? How frequently do you want that data? Where do you want it dropped off at, and everything like that? You've got to fix the inside before you can actually drive a foundation for the outside, which is where you look at if someone hacks on the outside, do they have access to the inside now? And how are you stopping that? So I see this, quite a bit where, you'll have a solution company. They'll come in, they'll say, look, we've got this tremendous edge-based camera, and, we segregate the video and we only bring back the metadata. And, now you have all of this tremendous insight. And okay, where do you bring it back to? Is it a video management system? If you're bringing it back, no, it's in the cloud. Okay, all right, now that's a whole nother conversation.
Right, exactly.
Because what security, and don't tell me about your security framework. I want to know your security model. The security model, because any standard is great. Any framework is great. Implementation can expose things that you didn't intend on.
Yeah.
So I think that, you've got to have for smart cities to actually pick up and take off. They now have the opportunity with the infrastructure bill to really fix things end to end. And we have to put a binder on what end to end means. To me, end to end is that sensor all the way over to the end person that is using that data. That's end to end.
I love that you're talking about this. This is so funny. So I don't know about you. So when I read some of these proposals for smart cities, almost all the time there is talks of frameworks, right? We do the, we use this framework, we do whatever. Hardly anybody talks about the end part. So they never talk about, so what about data retention? Like they never talk about that. They never, if you press them for that, they don't really answer that question. And to me, that's kind of where your biggest risks are, is kind of near that end part.
Yeah. And I mean, I just think it's the little things, right? Well, it was just an email that was leaked. Oh, okay. That's all. Just an email. Was it meant to go? No. That's exposure. And you have to do something about that. It's like you have to do something about that immediately. So end to end. And that makes the job quite a bit more difficult because again, if you have locked down your IT side and you have rules and you have roles and you have, continuous authentication and you have immutability and all these are the same things that you push out to the field. I mean, that's just how you do things. And don't tell me about your encryption. That's not security.
Right.
Encrypting the data, yeah, that's great. We use the same encryption that the banks do. It's not what I'm talking about.
Right, exactly.
Talk to me about the time, the first time that I power this sensor. What's it going to do? What device is it going to connect to? Where are the certificates? Is there hardware security?
Right.
Because a number of these things are sitting in NEMA enclosures and things of that nature. Is there hardware security? Is there tamper? Where do the alerts go? How do I get the alerts? Who acts on the alerts? There's just so many just basic things that I think you have to kind of think about, and it has to be end to end.
Right.
And I just don't think we're there yet.
Yeah. And then also who serves up the data and whose responsibility is it? You know what I'm saying? So if the person implementing it, who is it? Are you going to have a joint responsibility? Is it all on the municipality? How are you writing your service contracts and who's responsible for what?
Yes, right along with their SLAs.
Right, exactly.
So I mean, and if a device is found to be tampered or rogue or anything like that, is it quarantined? How is it quarantined?
Right.
There's a number of things that I think that from a security perspective have to be addressed. And so I'm a huge proponent of zero trust until you prove yourself.
Right. Well, I saw a statistic not long ago that said that IoT devices are attacked within like minutes of being put on a network, right? So, they are a vulnerability that people need to deal with, especially if their network isn't up to snuff. So their network, has kind of these open gaps and holes. IoT devices can help expose that in a bad way for companies.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, I think that Lan Jensen just did a post recently where she was at RSA and said, "Hey, there's a vulnerability right here." And I was like, wow, that you're at RSA, you find a vulnerability. That was an ultimate teaching moment right there. The ultimate teaching moment. I was like, that's just perfect. It's, and I think that literally, it's almost like I would use that as just a wide open use case for why, what minimal security would have been X would have prevented these things.
Right.
It's a perfect use of best practice.
Absolutely. And then too, I think consumers, we're talking about smart city spaces, they may see something that they could literally buy off the internet, right? You go to Amazon and buy this thing, you plug it in, and it's doing all types of crazy buck wild things that you have no idea about. I tell people a lot of these IoT devices, it's like computers without screens.
That's it. It really is. I mean, if you look at what, I mean, a lot of hobbyists use Raspberry Pis. Well, if they used a Raspberry Pi and they said, I think I got a product, that Raspberry Pi made its way out into the field. And I mean, it's most cities are not going to say, hey, we want to look at that and see exactly what that is. We want to understand the device. We want to understand what, operating system you're running there. What is, what version? Bigger than that, how do you deal with critical vulnerability exposure? Who's managing that for you? It just goes on and on. And that's, that then just, as I was saying that, I was like, oh yeah, that's another reason why I'm huge on SBOMs. They just, there's just things that are transformational and necessary in order for us to do some of these more advanced things that we're talking about. But it literally comes full circle. I have this technology that I want to use for these applications, and this is why it's good. And then you go, okay, well, your transport layer is what? How are your handshakes done? And certain technologies literally have a transport that by nature is not as strong from a security perspective as others. Well, I mean, Wi-Fi itself is just not. It's just not as strong. And I think your network at the end of the day is only as strong as your weakest link. And so, in some instances, you've got to look at what level of security are you using? How are you doing that? And that's why I think it's important for cities, which right now, I think cities have a technology gap in terms of, people, the skill set that's there. So it's tough for them to get a solution that's jumping them from, Windows 7 up to, a full Linux operating system that isn't running on a Windows box, and so there's a number of things that you really have to address there. But I think that security by design is the only way, because in the past it's only been an afterthought.
Yeah. How do you think privacy has ended up playing in the space? I feel like, in my view, the way people used to think about it, it's like, oh, well, the stuff that we're doing is not collecting personally identifiable information. So it doesn't really matter about privacy. But we know that that's not true. And we know that these technologies are getting more advanced. So the more advanced technologies are, the more data they collect. Smart cities, people live in cities, so it should be more people-centric. It should be to help people, I hope, who live in cities. But what are your thoughts about privacy in this space?
I think it's sorely lacking. I also think that the fear around it, so the lack of education drives the fear. So if citizens feel as though their privacy is invaded, if you're taking my identifiable information, personal identifiable information, and you're doing something with it that I don't know about, that to me is the crux of it. So there's a level of education that has to happen, and it needs to be a continuous thing. It's, privacy is and attacks and all of these other things are continuing to evolve. So the education has to continue to evolve. And I feel like that's where you start in the city, is with the people, for the people, and allow them to have a voice in really what's going on. So you need to reduce and ultimately eliminate that fear factor before we're able to actually move forward. And to that point, that's one of the reasons why a number of cities will not use cameras in the city. They're like, no cameras. we're not going to do that. Then if we don't do that, we don't have that problem. Yeah, but the data is still being picked up in a different you didn't solve that problem. You solved the problem of being able to see something at that particular time, which is still beneficial, especially if you're looking, if your traffic group has a Vision Zero initiative, having cameras is great because you can literally understand what happened at any given time. But I think that privacy is almost lagging behind security. Because, I think that people don't fully understand the gravity of that. They associate it with, I was just literally, I had my phone sitting here and I was talking. And then when I go to my, Facebook or Instagram feed or any of that stuff, same thing that I was just talking about shows up there. Oh, it's just the algorithm. No, that's a privacy thing.
Right.
I'm sorry, it's not. From even, because this whole proliferation of strong and really strong passwords, Google's kind of saying, well, look, don't worry about that. We'll take care of your single sign-on. Just sign on with your email address. Well, you just gave them all of that there.
Right.
And we're not doing anything with it. We're really not doing anything. It's like, no, this is 100% a battle for the data.
Absolutely. I know. And it's like consent is, I should do a whole thing about consent. So when you consent to something, a lot of companies want you to consent because you can consent to things that aren't in your best interest.
Absolutely. Well, and that's that reading the fine print, right? It's like, well, if you want this, why does any app want access to all of my contacts?
Right.
No.
Right.
So it's like, why do you want access to my microphone? Why do you want access to my camera? Why do you want access to this and that? And I'm like, wow, we don't even look at, if you looked at the data, if you just opened up one app and went through and did whatever it was that you were going to do, and if that application included you using photos, where were you at? You're giving up all of your information. I'm so-and-so. This is the application I'm using. I'm giving you pictures of a place that I was at this time. And you signed up for that.
Right. Exactly.
And it's not, I think it's not about, well, if you have nothing to hide, it has nothing to do with that.
No.
It has nothing to do with it. It's my data. And if I'm doing something like that, literally it should be between me and that service.
That's right.
And that's it.
That's right. Common sense, dropping the knowledge.
Yes.
Dropping the knowledge. Exactly. If it were your wish, Bill, for anything in the world around sort of privacy or security in any realm, including, smart cities, what would be your wish?
To be honest, I think my wish would be that there was true equity across the board, that there was true equity, that there was, there was no such thing as underserved communities. I'm not saying that you need to give these services to underserved communities and never, understand the business aspect of it. But I think it needs to be rethought. If it were anything that I could have, it would be true equity, true access to everyone, for everyone. And it were, you didn't have to worry about, your data being jacked and used elsewhere, your identity being stolen and used for nefarious purposes. You really did not have that worry, because I think if we had that, then the rest of these markets and opportunities would just blossom and grow.
Right. I agree with that. If people feel like they're really getting a benefit from something, they'll be happy to share data, right?
Yeah.
But I think the issue is, if I give it to you you shouldn't give it to someone else, or, you shouldn't use it in some other way other than what I said, you should use it for.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I think it would also do away with the need to have these third parties.
Right.
Because that's the other thing, is that people don't understand, when you're using these applications, there's a host of third parties that are sitting under there. So if I don't purchase the full version of something, then I'm going to get all these advertisements and everything like that, because that's the deal that they made. But as long as I'm getting those advertisements, these advertisements have access to my data as well. It's weird. I mean, the way that I look at it is like, yeah, and if I pay for it, then you just turned off some of them, right? Because there's no way that you're going to turn off all of them. So now I'm paying you. You're taking my data. I don't get to do what I want to do, and I just think that if we made it equitable, and did it for the people, then one of the things that I've said before is that it's not always about how do you monetize that data. That I hear that question so much, and it's if I give you a way to improve your operational efficiency, what is that worth to you?
Right.
As a city, municipality, or any other company. If you have now a way to, I just saved myself, 10, 15, $20 million a year by not doing things the way that I did them in the past, and letting the data and the insights and the data fusion and everything else like that work inside of my organization. Now I can take this money and reinvest.
Right.
And improve and continue to improve in other areas. If you do this across the board and make this an equitable thing for society as a whole, there's a lot of good that comes out of that. People become less worried, less scared, and you will then get the data. It's about building that trust. Right now, the citizens have zero trust in what's going on. So they're like, no, you're just trying to take something from you, and you're just trying to make it, you're just trying to make a dime off of me.
Right. Yeah, we're backwards. So right now we have citizens that have zero trust, but we want networks to have zero trust, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's the network should really be built that way. And and I mean, and I think that I think the cities need to start looking at themselves as the platform, and everyone else is a player, a participant.
Cool. Wow, this has been great. Thank you so much. This is really great insights. I love talking about smart cities and stuff. So I'm sure we'll be able to find new ways we could possibly collaborate. This will be fun.
Absolutely. It's a blast. It's always good. I still think that we're still in the infancy across the board in so many different ways. I think one of the other issues that we have is sure, there's talk and there's monikers and everything: smart city, smart grid, smart region. I mean, regionality is hugely important.
Absolutely.
But I don't see how we get there because everything is so fragmented.
Right.
So you can only do things in a little step-by-step fashion.
Right.
But there are other challenges that I think that encumber the progress. One of the things that I'm faced with on a regular basis is I get a new city contract or I get a new city agreement, and it's only as good as the elected officials that are there.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
right.
If they're gone, I'm back to square one.
Right. You have to start over again.
Yes. So there's so many dynamics that are tied there, and it's just interesting. So I'll be very interested to see how the rest of 22 plays out, and going into 23. How we not only start to really take a lot of the cybersecurity and privacy aspect of it seriously. It does not have to impede the progress of anything else. It
That's right.
needs to be a part of it, and it needs. I think it'll be written in that way. Just as you start to see new RFPs come out and how everyone's thinking about these smart communities. Smart communities is another one that I've seen, especially out here in Texas. There are 3 or 4 communities that they're building from the ground up that are walkable and all of and they're looking to be self-sufficient across the board. And I'm like, if you're doing that, now you're talking about, who the citizens are that live in that community,
right,
and whether they should be there or not. Your privacy policy better be very, very strong.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, I would love to chat with you more at some point. I think this is fascinating, but thank you so much for being on the show. This is amazing.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon.
Okay.